electeds, you're free to empty the room. All you guys come on up. And we can talk about what you're doing in Lansing and what it's like.
All up here at this table.
Sure, why not?
All right, awesome.
And then you know what? I just want to add to Jeff. Yeah, where's Jeff?
I think he likes at 10:30 or 10:15.
Wait,
Oh.
there are electeds that aren't coming up.
Yeah, electeds, come on up.
Over there.
Well, I know, we said, I know, but this is moot at this point, since we're all elected. Well, you're all elected. The only thing I want to add to what's up here, maybe I'll just read this off for the Zoom people, okay? Because we have a number of really important events coming up that I want people to know about. Do I need the mic? Give me a mic while I read the events thing. Okay, so today, can you hear me?
It's not on.
Please be on. Done. Okay. So today at the park, there's a cleanup at Park Ridge at the park. It's what's the address? 791 Harriet Street. This is, Park Ridge Community Center is there and the Perry Preschool is there and people are gathering to clean up there. So if you can make it today, that would be fantastic. Monday, the 15th, Voters Not Politicians is taking up money in politics, which is fantastic. So they are having a series of town halls, just the way they did for the gerrymandering piece. And we have one at the Ypsi Public Library, Whitaker Road, you guys? Is that the address of the Ypsi Public Library? Anyway, okay, on Monday, the 15th at 6:30 to 8. That should be incredibly interesting. I'm so happy that they're doing that. The MDP Legacy dinner is, of course, that's free. The Ypsi Public Library thing. The MDP Legacy dinner is not free. It's the major fundraiser for the party. Everybody, I mean, all the, statewide luminaries will be there. We're going, if you're interested in going and participating in our table, email me at chair@washtenaw-dems.org. Excuse me, the cost is $175 per person. So it's a lot, but you can, but it's a big event for the party. Thursday. Oh, this is so important. This is an important follow-up for us on all of our work on homelessness and all of our thinking and writing and meeting about homelessness crisis in Washtenaw County. The County Continuum of Care is meeting on Thursday, the 25th, at St. Joe's. It's at Thompson Women's Health Center. It's a 1 to 4 p.m. It's strategizing on homelessness in Washtenaw County. So if you really want to have a say in that and know what's going on, do that. The email address is kunesk@washtenaw.org. So that's the county doing that. That's Thursday, the 25th. Our next meeting is the 3rd, of course. Juneteenth, NAACP, the 17th is gathering. I think one of the most exciting things going on is Young Democrats of America are meeting in Las Vegas. If you're right, I wish I could go, but I can just help fund them, But June 18th to the 21st, YDA in Vegas. And so if you want to learn more, if you want to register, go to YDA.Vegas. That's it, just YDA.Vegas or #YDA Vegas. Our pal, Leah Schuyler, who's chair of the Cannabis Caucus, the MDP Cannabis Caucus, and used to be chair of the Young Dems of Michigan, invites you to ask her more about it. It's LEASKY1818 at Gmail. So that's for Zoom. Okay. LEASKY1818 at gmail.com. And then last but not least, and this is not the last one on the agenda, is May 26th. Actually, Brenda, do you want to speak about this briefly? Okay, May 26th, the National Black Women's Justice Institute, led by illustrious Brenda McKinney's illustrious daughter, Dr. McKinney, and Brenda is hosting, is exploring the overrepresentation of Black women in the criminal justice system and what can be done about it and what we can all do about it. You are all invited to that. It's May 26th. It starts at 6 o'clock. It's at the Washtenaw Golf Club on Packard Street. And do you have a quick RSVP link, or like how should people RSVP? Perfect. Okay, so if you want more information about the National Black Women's Justice Institute event on May 26th, email info@washtenaw-dems.org. And then I'll pass that on to Brenda. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
The Washtenaw County Democratic Black Caucus will be hosting our May meeting on May 27th here in the Learning Resource Center from 10 until probably noon. Actually, we have Hill Harper coming to meet and talk to us in person, along with Corrine Moore, who will be talking to us about the 3rd District Appeals court position that she is interested in. And we may, I don't have it confirmed yet, we may also have guests from the Michigan Black Caucus in our presence that day. So from 10, our typical meetings are 10 until 11:30. But if the Michigan Black Caucus joins us, we'll stretch it till noon. So
Okay.
you're all welcome to attend. Yes, ma'am. Right here at the Learning Resource Center. Thank you.
And Caroline, for more information about that, where should people go? Well, does,
So, yep, they can go to our link, which is on the Democratic website.
our website? Oh, yeah. Okay. So just, and in fact, just again, just go to info@washtenaw-dems.org and we'll send you more info about that. Anything else? All right. Eli, here you go. It's so exciting to have you all here. Thanks for coming.
I just want to say a brief thank you on behalf of Caroline, my wife. So some of you were here for the photo opportunity when the books that were purchased by Dems Care for Ypsilanti elementary school children were given to the FLI Ypsilanti tutoring program. This is a program that's been supported by the Dems, I have to say, especially Kathy Wyatt, thank you. And also received a grant from the American Recovery Funds, thanks to the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners. Now has 52 students, mostly 2nd through 4th graders, who are behind, sometimes significantly behind in reading, in part as a result of the pandemic. And thanks to adult volunteers who meet with the students once a week and teach the students at exactly their level, the students are making progress for the most part. So I just want to thank the Dems on her behalf. And if anyone knows an adult who's interested in tutoring, it's really an extremely worthwhile and for the children a life-changing experience. Thank you very much.
Eli, you're the chair of the program. Why don't you?
Oh, okay. I didn't realize I was signing up for this right now. The plan was to have a panel of our state legislators and several who are not here had other commitments previously. That's why they're not here. But Senators Schenck and Irwin and Representative Morgan agreed to give us an update about what the legislature has accomplished so far, now that the Democrats, for the first time in many years, are able to pass legislation, and also especially what they see coming, that there's still a lot on the agenda. And if you'll permit me, the other legislators like to start with that panel, and then to move on to comments from the other legislators who are present, our elected officials. So I propose to proceed in alphabetical order because I couldn't find a better way of doing this. And I'll start therefore with Senator Irwin. Thank you. And
I'm sorry, we cannot hear.
How about that? Can you hear that?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Holy cow. Wow. Okay. Well, good morning again. And, look, it's a tremendous honor and a pleasure to represent Washtenaw County and Washtenaw Democrats in Lansing. It's a really exciting time to be a Democrat. And one of the things that happens to me pretty frequently, particularly when I'm here in town, is, folks will say, oh, thank you for the work you do. Thanks for, getting these things done. I just want to stomp my feet as much as possible on this ground to say that it's really not so much the work that we're doing in Lansing that was critical to making change in our community and in our state. It was actually the work that we've all done together through Washtenaw Dems and through supporting campaigns that have put us in a position to have the votes to make a difference in Lansing. And so I just want to, continue to stress the fact that we're all in this together. And while those of us who get the opportunity to represent you have a unique responsibility and a unique pleasure of being able to be in the Capitol and to be front and center for some of these changes, you all have been there all along. So I see a lot of friends in the audience. All right, so I was supposed to talk about other stuff. I was supposed to talk about what we're doing and what we're going to do. I'm going to try to leave as much meat on the bone as possible and just talk about a couple things so that I don't step on my colleagues' toes. I was hoping to go last because there's just so much going on, and that, it's just sort of bubbling over with all these different issues we're working on, that there's just too much to talk about to be able to possibly cover everything. But I do want to say I'm really proud of the fact that we have acted quickly. We've passed a number of important bills. I think we've talked about those at previous meetings, and we can get into those if folks want to. But I guess what I wanted to talk about is maybe some of the stuff that you're not hearing about in the newspaper. We're right now in the middle of the state's budget process. We're looking at passing an $80 billion budget to invest the people's money here in the state of Michigan, just to give you an idea of the magnitude of the types of decisions we're making. And these are the decisions that directly reflect our values as a state, and they're so fundamentally important. So, once again, we're looking at a record K-12 budget. There's some really exciting things happening there, particularly making up more ground in special education, which is where there's the biggest gap in terms of the funding need versus what's been funded in the past. We've got a sizable increase for higher ed on the table. None of these things are completely through yet, but the budgets are now kind of making their way through the chambers. And in the Senate side, the higher ed budget has a 6% increase. That is, the biggest we've seen since my time in Lansing by far. And in fact, during my time in Lansing, we've seen some significant cuts in that line item. And when we have a community like this that is so wrapped in with Eastern Michigan University, with the University of Michigan, with Washtenaw Community College, that's a really important element for our community. And I just want you to know that those of us who are in Lansing are always have an eye towards, what's happening for our K-12 schools and what's happening for higher education. We're also continuing with a college affordability play, a new scholarship, the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. Everybody should know about that. It's the first significant new investment in college affordability that the state of Michigan has made in many, many years. It's taking us from being one of the worst states for need-based financial aid up into the top half. And so it was a big change last year, and we're continuing to include that. I've had the pleasure of chairing the EAGLE budget, Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. And that budget has in it some really big investments for replacing lead pipes, particularly in communities that are facing poverty. We've got some big investments in trying to help our communities meet their needs with sewer and water, also particularly focused on communities that are struggling financially. We've seen the problems in Highland Park. We've seen the problems in Benton Harbor. We've got communities right here in my district that are really struggling to meet their water and sewer needs. And so you'll see some appropriations to try to help them with that. We've got some dam removal money in there that is relevant to some of our communities here in Washtenaw County and is relevant all over the state. So the budget is something that I think all of us, at least certainly as a member of appropriations, I'm super focused on right now. But sort of on the horizon, we've been working on a lot of different policy bills. A couple in the criminal justice area that we've recently introduced that are really important to me are we're trying to end juvenile life without parole. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled over 10 years ago that was cruel and unusual punishment and therefore unconstitutional. And our state law hasn't been aligned with a new, more humane policy of dealing with juvenile offenders that gives them an opportunity to get out of jail at some point, because we know that it's hard to judge whether or not someone can be rehabilitated. But certainly when you're talking about a juvenile offender, trying to judge whether that person can be rehabilitated while they're still a juvenile right after they've committed their offense doesn't make a lot of sense. We need to take some time and give them a chance to seek parole. We're also working on a policy called Second Look, which is kind of similar in that it's saying when someone has served a long period of time, when someone's been in prison for 20, 30 years, let's give them a chance to repetition for a new resentencing, because we know people age out of crime. Once again, to the point I just made a second ago, we can't judge whether or not they're rehabilitated at sentencing. Let's actually give them a fair shot at being judged on whether or not they're rehabilitated after they've been long serving. We're working on trying to improve literacy for young learners. For a couple of years, we've been really focused on trying to change our laws around dyslexia and how phonics are taught in early grades. This is incredibly important because the research shows that teaching young readers how to decode language is actually how people learn to read. And there have been some fits and starts in our sort of philosophy and approach to teaching literacy in the last 30 years. And the more I get into this, the more strongly I feel that we need to turn back towards some of those more phonics-based methods. And I think we'll do a better job teaching our young readers to read. We just this week introduced legislation to try to rein in abuses by insurance companies. This is something that residents face all over the state of Michigan. And what specifically we're trying to do is we're trying to get at this issue when insurance companies employ this strategy of deny, delay, defend, right? They deny a claim knowing that that person's going to have a hard time fighting it, knowing that it might take years for that person to win their claim. And so what we're trying to say is we're trying to say that if an insurance company knows that what you're claiming is covered by their policy and they deny you anyway, they deny you in bad faith, and you can demonstrate that in court, that you should be able to get monetary damages for that bad faith. And, I think this is a good way to hold insurance companies accountable. A lot of other states do it this way, but Michigan, in the 40 years of Republican rule, have made this a very, very bad state to be a patient or a policy holder or anybody who is going against the corporate machine. And we need to have more elements in place to hold them accountable. We're also pushing really hard on clean energy. I've introduced community solar legislation that would allow people to invest cooperatively in solar arrays, but not on their property. So this is something that a lot of other states are doing. This is something that the federal IIJA supports handsomely. There are billions of dollars on the table right now that Michigan could be in line for if we had policies like this. So we're trying to make Michigan a more solar friendly state. And as you can probably suspect, I could go on and on and on. So I'll just close by saying this. One of the other big responsibilities I have in Lansing, and I would appreciate anybody's ideas in this space, is to chair the Housing and Human Services Committee in the Senate. And we've done some important things there, like expanding our state's earned income tax credit, like sorting out some important issues for the tribes with respect to guardianship, with respect to eliminating the asset test for food stamps. But we're looking for more ways that we can smooth the benefit cliff. We're looking for more ways that we can have a different philosophy towards human services, which is to say that we don't want to wait until someone's already fallen flat and is so deeply in poverty before we start helping them. We need to have a system that helps people earlier, that gives people smaller measures of assistance earlier in the process, because I think that will be more efficient and more humane. And that's what we're looking for. We're also looking to address housing affordability all over the state. And I think that comes in at least two flavors. One is we need to just build more housing all over the state. We absolutely have a lack of housing stock. We need more of it, period. And there are things we can do to actually drive down the cost of housing. And some of those are actually very environmentally efficient things. And so we're working in that space. But the other thing is we do need to improve our systems of subsidy to make sure that not only are there more subsidized units out there, but there's more public housing. And so that we drive down those housing supports to the folks who are most desperately in need. So one of the things that we were able to get in the budget last year, even under Republicans, was a $6 million line item for permanent supportive housing. This is money that goes to support housing agencies that bring social work into their mission and that work with their clients to try to keep them on track. And so that's what we got last year and this year. In this year's budget, it's not done yet, but so far in the Senate budget, there's 13 million for permanent supportive housing. Because once again, we're trying to work on workforce housing. We're trying to work on folks who are 80 to 120% of AMI. We're trying to work on helping people who are 30% to 60%, but we're also trying to work on helping people who are the very, very lowest income people in our state, people who are struggling with mental illness, people who, have breaks and end up, sometimes they end up in jail briefly, sometimes they end up in the hospital briefly. And those are the folks who, we need to provide more than just a monetary housing voucher. We need to provide a little bit of social work in there as well. So I said that I wasn't going on, but I did. Thank you.
You've got 15 minutes. Representative Jason Morgan, you were perfect. There'll be a chance for questions after the three legislators speak. Please.
Okay, thanks, Eli. And it is really good to be with everyone. I have to say, the more time that I've spent in Lansing, the more time I would rather be here. It is, there have been a lot of really, really exciting things happening. Certainly, the amazing work that we were all able to do, thanks to you all putting us there with a majority in each chamber and with the governor around repealing right to work, restoring prevailing wage, raising the EITC, as Jeff mentioned. We're putting money into gun violence prevention, work that some of us were working really hard to try and do here at the county. And now we're able to take that work to the state level and try and make sure that the state is also having an active role in reducing violence in our communities and addressing gun violence. I mean, that's a big deal, particularly the legislation around gun safety, with passing background checks, safe storage laws, and extreme risk protections or red flag laws. None of those would have happened if we didn't have the majorities that we have in Lansing. That is really, really big stuff. And as you all know, repealing right to work, we are the first state to do it in how many years? 60 years? 60 years. We're doing some things in Lansing that are pretty unheard of. So this is really exciting. On the House side of things, I'm also on the Appropriations Committee, and so the budget has been a huge priority of mine. Because when we talk about the things that we care about, we talk about our values as Democrats. Where that's reflected is through our budget and where we're prioritizing our resources, where we're spending money. And so when I think about some of the things that I've talked about a lot, around helping working families. That's through investing in things like reducing costs for folks, investing in infrastructure and education and providing opportunities for people. And as Jeff laid out with I think there are a lot of parallels, a lot of similarities between the budgets that we've passed in the House and the Senate so far. We are making major investments in education. I'm not sure if the Senate budget includes this. I think it might, but the House budget includes funding that would pay IPSI school debt, something that we've wanted for a long time in this community. That's incredible. So if we can help our communities in ways that can transform lives or really change lives, I mean, that's something that we can do with the space that we have in Lansing. Some of the other big things that I've been working on in the budget are frankly just good government things, local road funding. I don't know how many of us drive on our roads. I think it's all of us. I don't know how many of us think that they're great. Probably none of us. One of the things I don't think the state has adequately invested in is our local roads. Technically, a lot of folks, well, not even technically, a lot of folks will tell me that's the local community's responsibility. But we have millages here for roads. The state has failed to match the needs that we have. The state has failed to do their part to help us maintain our public infrastructure in our communities. We have to do a better job. So I've been rather intense in Lansing about local road funding because I just feel like it's such a basic common sense thing that we have the ability to help in, and we should be doing it. And so one of the things in the House budget that I'm very excited about is the inclusion of $400 million for local roads statewide. This is something that would bring $15 million into Washtenaw County to help specifically with our local roads. Those funds would go to townships, or it would go to cities and villages, and then to the County Road Commission to help with our township roads. This would be huge. It'd be $800,000 for the city of Ypsilanti. It'd be $4.9 million for the city of Ann Arbor, and it would be a whole lot of money throughout the county. This isn't usually a thing that I think Democrats are talking a lot about, but it's good government, in my opinion. If we aren't investing in the basic infrastructure in our communities, how can we have people trust us to do the really hard stuff like mental health and public health and address the challenges in our criminal justice system? We have so many challenges in our state, but I worry that we're not investing in some of the basic needs that we have. The environment is the biggest thing that I hope that we are prioritizing next. Jeff and Sue and I are all extremely passionate about that. And frankly, we have not prioritized it yet enough in Lansing. I sincerely believe, and I hope that that is the next step in the range of issues that we're going to tackle. But we have major needs policy-wise to help ensure the sustainability of our state. We're working on polluter pay legislation to make sure that we have a cleaner state. We're working on all of the renewable energy, the community solar, all of these things that we've long talked about and now should have the chance to do. So I won't go on too long here either, but a couple other things I do want to flag. In addition to road funding in the House transportation budget, we included $60 million more for local bus operating funds statewide, with the idea that if we're passing millages and we're investing in public transit, the state should be doing its part to help us do that and making sure that we're having the resources to do it. One of the things I'd like to see longer term, I don't know if a lot of folks know, but there's a small match from the state where the state will match up to 50% of operating funds for local buses. I'd like to change that equation to say the state will match at least 50% of local operating funds for buses. And we're not talking a wild amount of money. We're talking a couple $100 million. I've seen us spend a couple $100 million on plenty of things I don't like in Lansing already. So I guarantee we can find the resources for the things that we need if we want to. It's all about prioritization. And so things as simple as that are kind of the areas I've been spending a lot of time focusing on. The last thing I'll mention is I have the opportunity to chair the military veterans and state police budget in the House as chair of that subcommittee. And one of the things that I was able to put in the budget in the House side, as Jeff mentioned, it's a long process left to see what actually makes it through this whole process and stays in the budget. But one of the things I included in there was about $5 million to support communities who are trying to implement unarmed response. So communities could have a 75% match if they are interested in pursuing unarmed response, up to $1 million. So I know Ann Arbor is doing it, is working on that now. It would mean $1 million for Ann Arbor. I know Ypsi in particular is talking about or looking at it. It could be up to $1 million there. So money for our communities to invest in the things that we care about from the state. Those are things that we can do when we have majorities and we are in these positions to support our community. So I'll stop there. There's, as Jeff mentioned, there's just an endless array of things that we're working on that are really exciting to talk about. And we're just so thankful to all of you for putting us there and helping us have this chance to do this great work.
Thank you so much. Senator Sushink.
Hi, so the exciting thing about going third is that my colleagues have covered quite a bit. And I think one of the things that everybody needs to know, if you don't already, is that the Washtenaw County delegation all works incredibly closely together. We get along really well. We're really frank and forthright and cooperative with each other. And it's just such a pleasure to serve with everybody. And it's such a pleasure to serve with Jeff Irwin in the Senate. And wanted to express my gratitude to all of you, as well as our local officials too. I think we have a really constructive community here, and it shows in how we act as we're going through our days. I also want to say that Felicia Braybeck is really sick, and so she can't come today. I don't know how sick she really is. I I saw some looks of concern. She is too sick to come. She is working to get well. I don't think that she's on the brink of anything, permanent. So that came about as awkward as it could get. Well, right. I think she really doesn't feel well. I just didn't want you to think she was dying. So she's well enough to text, but not well enough to come. So I think what I'd like to my colleagues touched on a lot of what we've been working on. So I'm going to add some things and talk a bit more about what I'm doing, and not just in terms of legislation, but in terms of kind of community engagement to make sure that when legislation is introduced, that it's appropriate. We just passed out of the Senate a huge sexual assault prevention package that's designed to prevent the kinds of sexual assault that we saw with Larry Nassar or Dr. Anderson at U of M. And so there was a large package of bills. We heard from survivors who were abused by those doctors. And so I'm really proud of that. Also just some, we passed out a committee, the Civil Rights Committee, a law to prevent marital rape. We also passed out of the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee the Crown Act, not yesterday, this week, because a lot of Black people are discriminated against on the basis of their hair, and that's not okay. So those are some exciting things that we're doing. Another thing is we passed a bill. I think it may have become law now. It's hard to keep track of it all. Sometimes we have trackers to keep track of it all, or spreadsheets, I should say. And a bill to prevent discrimination against people on the basis of having had an abortion, right? So it's legal to do that in Michigan, but there are people who would discriminate against people on the basis of them just having an abortion. And the thing you need to know, because we live here in Washtenaw County, where as much as sometimes people don't always agree, most people are pretty thoughtful. Every time we pass one of these bills, including the bill ending the law against cohabitation, Republicans get up, and it's clear that they've put a lot of energy into their speeches. They think eloquently rail against these terrible laws that we're passing. And the majority is the difference between these laws that protect people's rights to live their lives in dignity and some really repressive theocracy. So just please know that, like, when you're out there working to get us elected, it really matters a lot, because we are not Florida, but we're a thin majority away from it, and a lot of cold weather. So it's important. I'm working on some clean energy laws with Senator Irwin. And then also we have a very robust land preservation strategy here in Washtenaw County. And I think this shows some of the value of electing local officials. There's something called 30 by 30 or America the Beautiful. It's a climate action and biodiversity preservation strategy. And so I'm working on that and working really hard to make sure it's something that works for communities kind of regardless of where they are across the state, something that will be as nonpartisan as possible in this climate. And it is a struggle because our departments have been controlled by having to kowtow to a majority that really didn't value environmental integrity, environmental protection. We know that from some of the things that we've dealt with here. And so trying to work through that and help them to understand that it's a new day in Michigan, and that Michiganders really care about the land, they care about environmental protection is a challenge, and we're up to it and keep working on that. Another bill that I just testified for this week was a bill to bring corrections officers, the state police who protect us at the Capitol, the way station officers and conservation officers into the state police pension fund. They have had a 401k system that is really not very robust. And we've heard from quite a few of the officers that it's a big part of why we are understaffed in those areas. And they do difficult work. They risk their lives. They're keeping us safe. And so, and I've spent several hours with officers to understand what they're looking for to make their jobs better and their lives better. One of the things with corrections officers is that because the department is so short-staffed, corrections officers who normally would work an 8-hour day, go home and then come back for another pre-scheduled 8-hour day, are told sometimes as they're about to walk out the door, hey, you're staying another 8 hours. And then they're working 16 hours. I heard from somebody who had gotten mandated overtime almost every single day last summer. And they don't have time to take care of their kids, do their laundry, live their lives the way we do. And I also heard from other officers that sometimes there will be one officer alone with 400 imprisoned people. And so it's not safe for anybody. And so working hard to do that. And since I'm chair of the Corrections and Judiciary budget, I'm also working to understand from the department what's going on. We toured Parnell Correctional Facility Vocational Village last week. We're going to Huron Valley next week. And I spent about 2.5 hours yesterday with about 10 men who had been imprisoned and call them returning citizens. We've done a lot of work here to try in Washtenaw County to make sure that returning citizens are getting what they need. And so I was really honored and blessed to sit with those men who were really honest and really frank about what they faced when they came home from prison and how they're working to make the community better and what might still be needed, because there is a lot still needed. And we know that when people get what they need, no matter who they are, they succeed. And so that's been my focus. And in terms of dealing with corrections, another thing that I have recently been spending quite a bit of time on is the corrections budget. And I was in charge of that for the Senate. And I am excited that we had enough funding to be able to put more funding into support for returning citizens. So peer-led reentry work, along with some of the more traditional forms of reentry support. And then another thing that I'm very excited about is a program for Huron Valley when sometimes women are imprisoned when they're pregnant and they may give birth while they're imprisoned. And there was a governor's directive that made it so that they had more support and wouldn't be shackled during birth. But that was the governor's directive that was already in place when I got here. But they were allowed to pump their breast milk and throw it away in case they might be reunited with their baby while their baby was still in a position to nurse. And so we put in some funding, and I have to give a big shout out to Erica Geis, who had been working on this for many years, Senator Erica Geis. Many of you know that if this survives the budget process, that milk would now be transported by volunteers to the babies. And so to me, this is a really important thing for the mother to be able to support her baby while she's incarcerated, but also for the baby to have her mother support his or her mother support them while their mother is incarcerated. So those are the kinds of things I'm working on. And it shows, I think, my holistic approach. We want to support everybody that's within the ecosystem, the department, the corrections officers, and the people who are in prison, so that everybody has what they need, so that everybody can be as successful in their role as possible. And then maybe that's enough. There's a lot that we're working on. We need your support. I think sometimes, you think, oh, they're all Democrats, they all agree. I think we're pretty united. We'll still need you probably I think I say this every time I speak to Democrats, but talk to the governor, right? Reach out to the governor's office and let them know the important things that you support. We are really focused on getting things done for our community. And sometimes that's going to bump up against what other people want to have happen. And we need your support. So thank you so much for everything you've done to get us here and everything that you've done to help us do a great job and we're going to keep doing our best. Thanks.
Thank you so much. At this point, I'm going to take 15 minutes and allow audience questions also via Zoom. We have, I think, a couple dozen people on Zoom following this, and then turn to the other elected officials. Tom, you had a question?
Yeah.
Let me give you the mic. Just a second.
Okay. So you were talking about housing, and I mean, fortunately for me, I have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, but thinking about our neighbors who rent and the way that landlords will raise the rent like threefold. What about rent controls? I know it's illegal in the state, but is that in the Constitution or is it just against state law?
Thank you, Tom Brennan. So anyone who cares to answer this from panel?
I'll take a first crack at it because so what's happened right now is that we have a state law that prohibits any sort of local rent control, and it probably is a little more sweeping than that. If you really look at it, it probably also covers other local ordinances that might affect rent, but aren't specifically what you'd normally think about when you think of rent control. I think of, kind of traditional New York policies around rent control. So a couple of years ago, I introduced legislation to repeal that law. I think that there is some support within the Democratic caucus to repeal that law, but I would be very surprised if there was a majority to repeal that law. I think we'll find out over the course of the next couple of years. I'm just giving you my read of the politics. And I think that, that's partly because, I think that rent control over the years has gotten, in some circles, it's very popular, and in some circles, it's very unpopular. And I think that there are a lot of progressive voices that have looked at what's happened in New York City or San Francisco, and they've said this hasn't really worked. So I think that's what makes it a little more complicated, but there is support for that. And also, I think that maybe where the sweet spot of support is at is more around the idea that the state law doesn't just prohibit sort of an old school New York style rent control, but it also prohibits maybe some new methods that some local governments might want to employ to control rents that aren't the same. That might be a new innovative way to do it, that might not have some of the legacy problems that policy has. So I know that's my read on the situation. I don't know if anyone else.
Thank you. Anyone else in the panel care to respond to that?
Yeah, this is an area I think I feel like it's like we're all so interested in, and we just have such similar values in the Washington County delegation that I think everything Jeff just said is what I would say on the House side as well. But I think there's a lot that we can try to do around. I know a lot of us are talking about kind of a renter's bill of rights and we're taking a wide ranging look at housing and rental concerns through our new housing subcommittee that we have on the House side. And so right now, one of our members is compiling all of the ideas that members have, and then they're going to try and figure out what's achievable. Because there's somewhere between what we have now and probably rent control, that there are a whole bunch of things in between there that could really help people, because what we have now is unacceptable. I look at housing and I see the private market has failed. The free market system in housing has unequivocally failed, particularly as a young person trying to start a family. We just bought a house, but it is wildly expensive. It is more than we could truly afford, but it's what we could get. And we have to do better. If we want young families, we want anybody surviving in our state and thriving here, we have to find a way so that we're not spending all of our money giving it to big corporations and landlords for rent or to buy houses. It is unacceptable. So I think you have a lot of members who are as passionate as we are on this issue, and we will do something about it. It's just a question of how much can we get done. And so I'm very excited to be continuing to work on it, but it is one of the most important issues that we're facing if we want people to live and thrive here in our state.
Senator Schenk.
So this isn't about rent control because my colleagues already answered it. But what I would say is we're working on some other bills to try to make it easier to build housing. And then also some to make it easier to rent. So on the build housing, there was a brownfield package. We have a really robust brownfield program here. We made it easier to build workforce and affordable housing with brownfield money, and then thereby remediate sites so that they're clean and safe. And then the other thing that I'm working on is eviction expungement, so that after 5 years, somebody could get their eviction record expunged. But again, it's up to a judge to make sure. I've talked to quite a few landlords. I haven't heard anybody who's concerned about it.
Thank you very much. Another question at the back? Let me get the mic to you. No, you're not gonna make fun of Zoom.
The question about dam, this is Ken McGee, and Jeff, the question was about dam control. I think the funding for dams, was that you that brought that up? I was just wondering how that operates. Will it be for dam removal, dam repair, that kind of thing?
So it's somewhat complicated because there are a couple different pots of money. There was a big chunk of money that was approved last year under Senate Bill 565 that is sort of one bucket, and then there's what's in the budget going forward. So looking back, there was a substantial amount of money that was put in the budget last year for dam repair or removal. And then there was also a big set aside for that Sanford Dam situation up in Midland. So that's the money from last year for repair or removal. There's a scoring methodology that Eagle uses to analyze different requests from local communities. And some of those requests are for removal, some of them are for repair. The scoring methodology puts reducing risk to human life and property at the sort of top of the priority list in terms of how the scores are done. That's as close as I can get you this morning to how it's done. This next pot of money is puts a little bit more of a priority on removal and on restoration of like cold water, trout habitat and things like that. And so we tweak the language going forward if this budget language ends up making it all the way through to nudge things is how I would describe it, a little bit towards removal because of the environmental benefits of that, but also because the state has a lot of old dilapidated dams, and if we fix them, we're just going to have to fix them again in 20 years, and they're not actually providing functional value in most circumstances. Every situation is different. Every local community has a right to decide sort of what they want to do with their dams and with whatever impoundments have been thereby created, but there are a ton of dams across the state that just need to come out, and there's not enough money to do it.
Thank you. I think at this point, I'd like to ask if there are any officials, legislators who have to leave in the next 15 or 20 minutes, because I want to give you a chance to speak. And then we'll have time for more questions. Do any of you need to leave, the ones who have not yet spoken? No. Okay, then Sharon? Justin, you need to leave?
No, I don't need to leave, but the county team wants me to go first. That's our turn.
Okay, well, you sure, man, but let Sharon Simonson go first, since she had her hand.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to get back to something Senator Zink mentioned about asking for our support. And I wanted to ask the three of you, what would be the most valuable and useful ways that we as constituents can support your work at this point?
Oh, sorry. By giving him the mic. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think, I'm a little worried about this environmental legislation. I'm worried that there isn't entirely, I don't know if I should be saying that or not, but I'm just going to say it. I don't know, but I worry because we passed all these laws and we passed them pretty unanimously. And the environmental stuff is, it doesn't seem to have quite the widespread support. And maybe that's just a moment of time, right? Where we need to spend more time explaining to our colleagues why this is so important. I just want to, so I'd say reach out if you have friends who live in other districts and talk to them. We can give you more information about what we're working on and how to do that. Or You're gonna reach out to the governor's office. If she wants something to happen, probably gonna happen. And she's been real supportive of the climate legislation. She announced, that she was working with the legislature on it. And so, but I think, every elected needs support. We get a lot of letters from people who say, don't do that, or, yeah, I mean, they don't use that kind of polite language always. And if you look at our Twitter feeds, or if you look at our Facebook feeds and you scroll down, you'll see the nasty comments we get. So I think, if you have friends who live in other districts where maybe there are Republicans or Democrats who might not, be as quite as gung ho, that it'd be great to talk to them and let them know that it's important to support this stuff. And then we might ask you to come testify at some point or protest with us. And let us know what's going on. That's another thing too.
I would just add that the thing that I knew was part of Lansing, but didn't realize just how much of an issue it was the influence of money there. Like I knew that was the case, but the blatant horribleness of it is something that I think has been really disturbing to me. I really do think it's always been a priority of mine, if I were to be elected in a position to be able to do something about it. But it is such a bigger priority now to find a way to put some guardrails on the money in our politics in Michigan. The number of times I just, it's sort of hard to know what you can say, but the number of times I've seen the influence of money stop things from moving or even being introduced is disgusting. Our political system, our lack of ethics laws and accountability laws in Michigan are some of the worst in the nation, and it is really, really disturbing to me, because I have seen every bad policy is the result of a bad actor with a good lobbyist in Michigan. And that is unacceptable. There are a lot of us who are new, particularly in the House, who come from a place of either local government where we've had some pretty decent rules around what we're supposed to do and how transparent we're supposed to be. But in Lansing, that is not the case. There are a lot of us who are coming in and we're saying, this is not good government. Some of the ways that we've seen the influence of money and power in our system. And for me, what I say to that is if we're going to let those same people who've been dictating what the state does under Republicans have the same amount of power under Democrats, then what the hell is the point? We have to fight back and stop that. We do. Because when it comes to doing what's right for people or doing what's right for the people with money and power, they have a decent chance of winning a lot of the time under our current system. And we have to do something about it. The other last piece of that I would say is that when people with money and power are the ones making decisions, low income and people of color are the ones who are going to lose more than anyone else. And those of us who care about those folks or are those folks, we're the ones that need to really fight back against that, not just here, as Sue was saying, but in our entire state. And we need to make sure every legislator in our state, certainly at least the Democrats, understands that the right thing to do is to stand up for people no matter what.
Senator Irwin, do you want to add anything, or?
I think it was very, very well covered, but I do just want to stomp a little bit on this ground and say that what can you do? Well, you can raise your voices, because everything that my colleague said is absolutely right. When we talk about issues like accountability for polluters, we're talking about taking on some of the most powerful interests in our state, the biggest companies, the deepest pockets. And so, when you have an environment in Lansing like we do, where it's a 1-vote majority in each chamber, those interests only really have to peel off that one vote. And so we need to find out who is the mansion in this situation. And then we need to give them the business. We need to raise our voices. We need to let them know what we think about it. We also need to let our leaders and the folks who lead our caucuses and the governors, hear about it. We, need to frankly, mature in a certain way as a party. We have been a minority party for so many years in the Michigan legislature that's created a certain attitude among Democrats, which was healthy and important in that moment. Now, in this new moment where we have power, we need to learn how to have difficult conversations with our friends and, pressure them to do what we think is right while remaining, respectful. And so I would say all of that plus give to WCDP. This is a great organization. This organization does good work. It promotes power for progressive causes within the party.
Thank you very much.
One little thing. If I could just add one little thing, a very specific example of where Democrats don't all agree and where Washtenaw County could use your help is there were some bills introduced in the House last week that would preempt local control over the siting and operation of sand and gravel mines. And it's huge in Western Washtenaw County. It's huge in my district, and it's a Democrat on Democrat thing. The Republicans have been pushing it in the past. It's all about big money, and we could really use your help reaching out to the governor and other representatives. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanders, I believe you had a question.
They're making fun of me. I've lost my voice a little bit. I wanted to ask our Lansing legislators if you could address sort of a hot potato that we've had here recently related to Public Service Commission and utilities. And how do we I've had some conversations with one particular utility. They weren't really happy with what I had to say. But basically what I said to them is this whole poverty claim that you're throwing out there, corporate poverty, just doesn't work for me. And so I'm just wondering, what do you all, what have you done? What are you interested in doing related to the ongoing requests for increases in what they're charging the residents, but yet still not seeming to put a dent in the maintenance that needs to be done in order not to continue to have these mass outages. I'll give you an example. So what I have asked them, no names, is if you are importing all of these workers from out of our state to do this work, and you're taking over hotel spaces, when our residents lose their electricity and they need to go and stay in a hotel, why can't you be the guarantor for those rooms? Because we take for granted that someone has a credit card or that they have cash to put down and pay for the sundries and the deposits for the room, and that's not the case. And so what can you do to help put pressure on these utilities to do a better job and stop crying about this is a 50-year storm? Specifically, what I said to them was, you all have meteorologists on staff. So this shouldn't be a surprise that this is happening. So if you could address that.
And they use that historic storm as an excuse too.
See my last comments.
and just to know. Okay. All right. Jason and I didn't, but Jeff's working just as hard. I introduced a bill to expand the purview of the MPSC to include affordability, which it doesn't right now, and not explicitly, and reliability, which they do address, but not in the same way as I wish they would. And so, as well as climate and health effects. So that's one. And then there's going to be a bill, but it's still being worked out to cap the percentage of income that a person with a low income would be spending on electricity to about something like 6%. There's also in the works, a water one as well. And so there are a few more around that. There've been some hearings, there've been some private conversations pressuring, but again, as Commissioner Morgan, we're having sort of a commissioner and ex-commissioner reunion today. Has said DT puts a ton of money in. I mean, they're a big part of our community. There's no question about that. And DT needs to continue to be a strong company, but they posted a $1 billion profit and their CEO makes over $10 million. And so, yeah, corporate poverty. No, when I was a commissioner, I mean, you know, we have and still problem. The county can't get information on who's having trouble paying their bills because Washtenaw County could pay their bills for them, but DT won't give us the information, won't give the county the information. So there's a lot wrong that needs fixing.
Thank you. I understand we have a couple questions online. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, so, yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Right there? Okay, good.
Commissioner Sanders wants me to answer the last question. So very, very briefly, everything they said, plus a couple of other things. One, there's some legislation out there that would change the penalties that the utilities have to pay when they fail to keep your power on and make it so that they start sooner and ramp up higher. I support that. I think we should do that. You know, also, I'd love, if you really want, we can have a deeper conversation about how this has gotten to this point, because over the course of the last 10 years, there have been a number of pieces of legislation that have pushed commercial and industrial rates down, and residential rates have gone way up as a result. The only other thing I'll just say to add to what Sue said is that if you listen to what they say in their earnings calls and their reports to their stockholders, it's very different than what they said in the legislative hearings we had. While they're claiming poverty and need in those hearings, when you listen to their calls, they're posting billion-dollar profits. Not only that, they're bragging to their shareholders about how they've reduced their workforce, reduced their maintenance workforce in the last 10 years to save money. And I just think it's completely unacceptable. So that's one of the reasons why I've been engaged for a couple of years now in a group called Ann Arbor for Public Power, because we're looking at the opportunity to say, look, we do have a municipal right under our Constitution to take public ownership of the system. That's how we provide our water. And I think if anyone proposed selling our water to a private entity, I know I would think that was daft and nuts, right? And so why do we think it's so normal that electricity is provided the way it is? That's not actually how electricity is provided in most of the nation.
I just want to say, I just love having you all here, and especially like you talking to each other. This is perfect. So thank you so much. This is like in the same line of thinking, because, you know, we have been hearing about polluter pay legislation for 100 years. And it seems like, talk about what seems obvious. I mean, for God's sake, first of all, we subsidize their work and then we pay to clean up their mess. So I know now that we have a majority, we might actually get that done. But now I'm worried because of the money in politics conversation. So can you update us about where that stands and if there's actual hope to get that passed? Because that is an absolute outrage.
There is hope, but there are great challenges. So everything we were saying about taking on powerful interests, when you start talking about corporate responsibility, things get challenging. People get worried about their next campaign. People get worried about those marginal districts and whether we can win them. And when you look at what's happened in the first several months of this year, you can see a heavy emphasis on trying to attract these big battery plants. Now, look, I think that the governor, even though philosophically that stuff doesn't warm my heart, and it's, you know, a challenge for me to engage with those, the governor's made a strong argument that if we want to build the cars of the future here, this is how we do it. So, but, you know, that context that we're operating in, where we're, you know, saying we need to continue to invest in the auto industry, makes it even more difficult to then turn around and say, oh, and we need to make sure that we hold them accountable. Now, I think for some of us, that's no problem. We want jobs, but we want good corporate citizens, and so that's not a challenge. But for some folks, you know, it's going to be hard to get that vote. So here's what's happening. Representative Morgan and I have been working very closely on this. We're trying to develop a whole suite of bills that will improve polluter accountability in a variety of ways. There, you know, one approach is to just go back to the original polluter pay, which would be to say that if you own a piece of property that's polluted, you got to clean it up no matter what. frankly, I think it's going to be hard to get the votes for that because there are a lot of people who've bought property that is polluted, that they didn't pollute, and they're going to come forward and they're going to say, woe is me, I shouldn't be responsible for this person who polluted this land before me. And so I think we need to work around that concern a little bit by basically requiring the folks who are owning land that is polluted, whether it's an orphan site that they picked up or whether they're the responsible party, require that their cleanups are more transparent so that all that information about their monitoring wells and what kind of pollution is being found is available to Eagle. It's not. And that it's available to the public, so the public has the right to know. I think improving transparency is a big part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to improve the stringency of the cleanup so that when sites are analyzed to determine whether or not they're clean enough, that clean enough is more clean than it is now. And finally, I think that we need to invest more in enforcement of these environmental laws. And to do that, we need resources. And I think that the people who should pay for that are the polluters. And so we've been talking about some sort of toxics tax, some sort of excise tax like we pay on gasoline, but that big holders of large amounts of chemicals and industrial chemicals would have to pay. The interesting thing about that is in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act at the federal level, they just created a tax like that, a toxics tax at the federal level. So there's a regime for us to key into there to make compliance easier and all of that. So those are some of the ideas we're working on. We're also working on financial assurances so that there's more bonding and insurance for cases where we think that there's a likelihood that there'll be legacy pollution left behind, so that there are dollars there to go after so that the taxpayers aren't on the hook. I'm sure I'm leaving some stuff out, but that's kind of what we're trying to cover.
The only thing I'd add to that is, somewhat going back to the comments around the who has influence here in Michigan. Another hat I wear is as vice chair of the Michigan Democratic Party, and one of the things that I think that there's an opportunity for there is making sure that our party, through our county parties, our clubs, through the Michigan Democratic Party, that we are making our voices heard through those spaces as well, to make sure that we are focusing on Democratic priorities. Because that isn't necessarily the case. We are not anointed people once we have a majority in the House or the Senate or the governor's office. We are not anointed. You do not have to listen to us. You still tell us the things that you care about and the things you want us to be working on. And I believe that there is a really important role to play for our party in making sure that our party is saying, here are our core democratic principles and priorities when it comes to what we invest in and what we pass legislation to do. And I promise you, all the things that we all care about are included in those core democratic priorities: the environment, working people, equity, education, infrastructure, all of those things that are good government things that we care about, the reasons we are Democrats. And I think our party needs to play a role in pushing us to say, hey, we need you focused on these core democratic priorities, because we don't know how long we have majorities and we need to make them worth it. We need to get everything done that we possibly can in the time that we have. And I think that we as parties, I appreciate that you're all listening to us, but we also need to listen to you and have you tell us what things you want us to be fighting for, because the fights that we're taking on, the issues that seem so simple for us here, are truly hard. And frankly, some of them are really, really hard. I'll just say it there, but I've had a lot of hard days as a legislator fighting for the things that we care about, because not everybody agrees with us. And the interests that are in our state are working really hard to make sure that we do not succeed.
Can I just take this over to Janet? Is that okay?
Actually, I think I'd like to let Joyce Olmsted,
Oh,
if
Joyce,
it's possible,
sure, online.
ask her a question. Yeah, we have someone online.
Yes.
And while we're waiting,
Hello?
we can hear you, Joyce. Please ask your question.
Yeah, I just have a question. I was wondering if there's any interest in the legislature in having a deposit in the state for plastic water bottles.
Yes. Absolutely.
Senator Irwin, deposits on plastic water bottles, yes or no? Yeah. Okay, there's your answer. Also, I want to take this opportunity to thank Jim Russo for the technical support here. He's set up, made it possible for a couple dozen people to participate online. So it's really expanded our audience. Thank you very much, Janet.
Okay, quick one. I was thinking recently, we have done relatively little with resolutions. And in line with what Jason just said, rather than having a lot of individual expressions, would it be useful for us to consolidate around a bunch of resolutions and send them to the state party and, is that effective? Okay.
I think so. I think letting know the things that we care about. Oh, yeah, sorry.
You got the same mic.
I think so. I think to us as Washington County legislators, I think to the governor, I think to the party. I think that's really helpful for us to hear those messages, because people, I don't know, it's almost like folks just think we're going to do the right thing because we should, and that's how I operate, but that's not the case. So we need people to be pushing and to be advocating and saying, basically like, we're so glad that we have these majorities. Here's what we hope will get done now that we have them.
And share them with all the other county parties.
Yes. Great.
Thank you very much. I think Barb Fuller has a question.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to turn the panel over to the Washington County Board of Commissioners.
We still have questions online.
Two more online. Okay.
We'll be real quick in our answers.
My name is Barb Fuller, and I live in a very rural area of the county, which I feel is underrepresented in many of these discussions and prioritization of issues. I want to thank all of you for being sensitive to local control. Senator Schenck, you mentioned that about the gravel mines. We also have solar farms, and while we're pro-environment, we have concerns about where these solar farms are placed, what they look like, how they impact the quality of life in the rural areas. And I often feel that that's not represented in these conversations. I'm going to implore our state legislators to consider making broadband a utility. Broadband is an unregulated monopoly in this state. Talk about big money. And also the gravel mining. There are millions of dollars being put behind these strip mines in beautiful rural Washtenaw County and probably other parts of the state as well. But there are many people who probably would have liked to have tuned in today and they cannot, because they live in an area where they either don't have internet access at all, or they have data caps that make it prohibitively expensive to stream anything. And I'm one of them. I have a data cap. Those of you with unlimited broadband bandwidth and data, you have no idea. And it's not just me wanting to tune into a county party meeting. We've got kids that can't do their homework and are at a distinct disadvantage, which is what motivated me to chair the broadband task force. And thank you to the commissioners who made that allocation possible. But please pay attention to access to information and broadband access, affordable, reliable, accessible, and they are an unregulated monopoly.
Actually, let me let the commission, our legislators respond to that briefly. Take it easy.
I agree with everything she said.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to make it a utility. I remember back in 2006 when a law was passed that expressly said it's not a utility and the local governments couldn't own and operate these types of services. And I'd love to see that kind of competition, back in that market. So, yeah. They could play a stronger role than they do now. That's certainly true. The problem is that when these systems were set up, the question was, could the MPSC, Michigan Public Service Commission, play a stronger role here? They definitely could. We do run into a little bit of boundaries though with, that system. Those laws were initially written for landlines. And there hasn't really been a thoroughgoing update to say how should their authority and service quality standards and those kinds of things look in this new environment. And the telecoms like it that way, with our laws in the Stone Age.
Thank you. So Jim, you say there are two more questions online?
Horst is unmuted already. Horst Schmidt.
Okay, Horst Schmidt, want to ask your question?
Thank you. Putting on top of the aggregate mining thing, a question of reforming with Michigan's mining laws, doing something, getting rid of the subsurface rights, and forcing people to lease land to the mining companies, whether they want to or not. With the Inflation Reduction Act and BIL, it looks like we're trying to reinvent the same pollution problems of the past mining practices into the new era, so we can have this wonderfully clean environment and pretty much sack the areas that have the resources that are supposed to give us this bright new future. So and this is big, you know. I'm even not saying, boy, you guys got to do all this. I just want to touch on things and see if there are areas where we can, you know, start making some changes so that we don't have the same problems, and actually make, you know, pure Michigan really mean something rather than just being a PR gag. So
thank you. I couldn't understand every word, but perhaps the legislators understood. Perhaps.
I did have trouble hearing you, Horst, but my thought is I'm working through these issues is we've got the aggregates bills, they're a crisis for now, that they have to be dealt with, and I'm hoping that either they don't pass through the House, or that we can amend them in a way that allows local communities to do what they need to do to protect themselves, and gives those the sand and gravel mine, the aggregates industry, an incentive to accommodate, or not accommodate, but I guess respect the communities where they're locating. My belief is that the preemption is designed to exempt the companies from having to respect the communities where they're locating. There are aggregate mines in our community that do respect their neighbors. And when I've talked to those neighbors, they don't have a problem with them being there. And so we need to give companies of any kind incentives to respect their neighbors. That's what I learned in economics class, that profit seeking entities should account for all of their costs within the price of the goods that they sell. And when the neighbors' homes are being reduced by 30%, or they're breathing in silica dust, or they're having to keep their windows shut all day, every day, because the dust is rolling in, the neighbors who are getting no profit from that company being there are bearing the cost of that product. And that's not how that's supposed to work. It's how it does work in many cases. It's not how it's supposed to. The other thing is, I'm aware that Michigan's oil and gas laws are very much not in line with best practices. Texas, which makes a huge amount of money off of oil and gas, has much stricter laws around cleanup and environmental safety. And so we have a long way to go in a lot of these things. And I don't know that that will be easy work. I think it'll be very difficult, because the corporate resource extraction interests in Michigan have a lot of money, and their interests aren't usually aligned with people's interests.
Thank you.
I think Sue covered it great.
We have one more question, I believe, from Zoom, and then we're going to turn to the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners. Commissioners?
Yes. Well, this is Janice Townsend, trustee for Ypsilanti Community Schools Board of Education. I wanted to publicly just say personally, I would like to thank everyone's effort on the state and county levels, and even our local officials, for working to address the debt issue for Ypsilanti Community Schools. I also want to thank those individuals that attended the Washtenaw Area School Boards Association Legislative Breakfast. We are diligently working as a unified board on a county level to address and advocate for the district, because this is just not a YCS issue. This could address this could be an issue for any school district. And I encourage people to really attend school boards and get engaged with school funding and things such as that. However, my question is today, it goes back to the homelessness issue and unfair practices that are occurring with individuals who are recipients for Section 8 and or returning citizens who are being discriminated for being approved for housing, for rentals. It is out of control at this point. And my question for our state legislators is, has there been any conversations on how we can further implement state ordinances or laws that prevent businesses from discriminating sources of income, whether they're receiving a voucher and or just having unseen discriminatory practices for people who have served in prison or jail, whatever. Because on the uniform mortgage lending application, when they apply to purchase a mortgage, there is no question on that application that addresses anything about a person's criminal record. Section 8 is considered a source of income on a mortgage application. So banks do not discriminate for sources of income. So I think we really need to have a serious conversation of how we can address this issue with discriminatory practices for sources of income for people who are on Section 8 and or even people that have a criminal background being denied for that reason.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to have that question because that is something that the first bill, at least to a piece of what you're referring to, the source of income discrimination was the first bill I introduced as a legislator. And I've been working with Jeff on this. We've been working on, and he can share some updates on where it's going here. But Representative Conlon from Northern Ann Arbor, Northern Washtenaw County up to Livingston County, her and I introduced bills together to ban source of income discrimination at the state. This seems like something that should be passable under our legislature. There are some folks who have pushed back already, and I think we're working to push back against them pushing back on us. But it's a very real and a very serious issue, not just on source of income for Section 8, but also for our veterans. One of the conversations I had chairing the Military and Veterans Subcommittee was talking with the department, and one of their budget requests was a landlord mitigation fund. And I said, why would you need that for veterans? And they said, well, because we have landlords that won't rent to veterans because of where their income comes from through a voucher at the federal level. And I said, I'm sorry, what? And I said, we talked about how our bill would actually help make sure that nobody faces discrimination based on where their income comes from. But I didn't know it was really happening at that large of a scale for veterans. And I said, no, I'm not putting money in a budget for landlords to discriminate against people. I'm going to tell them they can't discriminate against anyone. So I said, I look forward to having you support our bill that we've introduced that would just simply say, no, you're not allowed to discriminate against veterans, folks in Section 8, or anyone who has a different benefit coming from somewhere that will help them pay their rent. So we are working on that. I think we can get that bill passed, but along with everything, somebody will push back against every good pro-people policy that we've talked about so far. And so I think we can do it, and it is so important to make sure that those protections are in our state.
Yeah, the only thing I can add to that is we also have source of income anti-discrimination bills, or bills that would prohibit discrimination based on source of income in the Senate. I'm one of the sponsors. We are extremely likely to have a hearing on that legislation the Tuesday after next. So we've been trying to get that scheduled for a hearing and trying to move it forward through the process because, as Representative Morgan mentioned, and as Trustee Townsend mentioned, it's an important issue and we need to get it done.
I will say, I met with some of the folks who are opposed to this, and they said, we're fine with this, but could you just take out the Section 8 part? And I said, no, that's the whole point of the damn bill. So happy to work with people, but within reason.
Thank you. I think at this point, I'm going to ask Commissioner Hodge to speak. And there will be a chance for more questions after the commissioners speak, and also Ellie Savitt, the Washington County prosecutor, who's very patiently also waited his turn.
Very patient, our prosecutor here, member of a team here. All right, who's ready to talk about county issues? Yeah. All right, county stuff. All right, I'm Justin Hodge. I'm the chair of the Washington County Board of Commissioners, and I represent District 5, which is the southeast corner of the county, which is most of Ypsilanti Township and all of Augusta Township. Anybody from District 5 here? Anybody? Yeah. All right. Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I know you are. Thank you. My neighbor. All right. It's always great to be on a surprise panel. So we're on a surprise panel. I like to start with what I call Justin's greatest hits. So we're going to start with children's savings accounts. So you've probably heard me talk about this several times over the last few years. So as a reminder, children's savings accounts are programs where you typically, in many cases, automatically enroll kids in savings accounts for college or any kind of post-secondary education. The research on that shows that having a savings account like that, even there's not a ton of money in it by the time that you graduate, makes you several times more likely to go to college or any kind of post-secondary education because you develop this mindset that you're saving and going to college. Our board allocated $6.7 million to starting a countywide children's savings accounts program. And we're going to start rolling that out this month. It's going to be called My Future Fund. So we have a name for it now. So stay tuned on that. We'll have more information coming out, and I hope that everybody in the party will help us share that. Another one that I talk a lot about is our Financial Empowerment Center. So as a reminder for that, the Financial Empowerment Center will provide a variety of financial services for free to anybody in Washtenaw County that wants them, such as financial counseling and a bunch of other things. The big piece, the big update I have for you now is we've hired the 2 financial coaches that are going to be doing the free financial counseling, and they're going through they're completely trained at this point. So we're going to be rolling that out soon. We partnered with a number of community organizations where you won't just have to go to one place. If you want to meet with one of the financial counselors, there will be a number of places across the county where you'll be able to engage with people. The other piece that's really interesting is around fines and fees. I talked about this, I think, last time I was here. There are a number of fines and fees associated with our criminal legal system that keep people trapped in that and trapped in cycles of debt. I think I mentioned that we had a summit 3 or 4 months ago, I think now, where we engaged with some of the partners from San Francisco, where they're really leading in this work. And as a consequence of that summit, we had the chief judge make a couple of calls and eliminate just during the summit some of those fines. So now we're taking a more deliberate approach to looking at the criminal legal system more holistically and figuring out where we can eliminate more of those fines and fees. Next up on the list, Eastside Recreation and Community Center. So we mentioned earlier that Congresswoman Dingell was able to get us a $3 million earmark for that. And then the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners allocated $7 million to that. And our Parks and Rec has allocated 6.5. So we're about halfway to the 30 million or so that we think it'll take to finally get this to the finish line. It was mentioned earlier that this has been an issue for a couple of decades, and I'm confident that we'll get it to the finish line this time. It's always, I think, politics that's gotten in the way of it, and the politicians that would make it challenging have failed in making it increasingly challenging. So talk more about that when I don't have the microphone. Next up is the Reparations Advisory Council that we've talked about. So applications have closed for that. So as a reminder, Washtenaw County did a exploratory committee where we looked at what would it look like for Washtenaw County's government to engage in reparations. They worked for about a year, and then now we have moved to create an advisory council, and we're going to appoint people to that, experts in a variety of different sectors. It's not time limited, so I expect after a year they'll give us some sort of report, but they'll continue to work and then ultimately give us some recommendations on what reparations might look like from Washtenaw County. So we'll be doing interviews for many of the people that applied for that, and then I expect to make appointments to that maybe next month or the month after. Criminal Justice Collaborative Council. This is one that we've been really working to try to get off the ground. It's has some starts and some stops, some Open Meetings Act issues that maybe our colleagues on that side of the table might be able to help us with, but we're going to be relaunching that finally. So the Criminal Justice Collaborative Council, we're looking at this as a venue to bring all the people involved in our criminal legal system to the same table to have conversations about what's going on in each of your departments. Like Ellie, people may not know what Ellie is doing in the sheriff's office, for example. It would be really helpful for people to know what the prosecutor is doing. So we're going to use that as a way to make sure that everybody that's involved knows what's going on, and so we can have policy conversations and eventually pass policy through the Board of Commissioners. Tobacco, and I don't know if I'm going to have uniform support from all my colleagues on this one. Nope. Oh, wow. And he's like, nope, I'm not going to. Nope. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it anyway. So in our County Board of Health, we've seen a number of presentations around the impact that flavored tobacco products have on communities. We know that they're increasingly, they're more addictive, and they have been targeted towards minority communities over the years. One thing that our Board of Health passed a resolution urging our state legislators to ban flavored tobacco products. I expect that we'll also, I'm not going to say pass it because I don't know how all my colleagues feel about it, but we're going to look at a similar, having the Board of Commissioners pass a policy or a resolution calling on our state legislators to ban flavored tobacco products. Health equity. So we allocated a good chunk of dollars, a couple million or more, I think. You guys show on the board back then. Yep, towards increasing the health equity initiatives coming out of our health department. We've taken an additional step, and our health department has hired a health equity manager. So now we have somebody in the health department, whether they're going to be hiring the person. I think the position's probably closed at this point, but we're going to be hiring a person that'll lead the health equity initiatives coming out of the health department, which is really exciting. Halfway through the list. Courts. So there are a number of really interesting things that we're partnering with our courts on. One of them is we just passed a grant application at our last meeting for a drug court, and that'll be out of 14A, I believe. And we are also looking at starting a eviction court in Washtenaw County. So that'll help us as we try to tackle the affordable housing crisis. And climate action, I know that's really popular here. So we're moving forward on our climate action plan at the county. I think at this point, we're starting to think about how many positions we might have to hire for that. I think ultimately we'll end up having something like a resilience office, and then maybe a couple of people that are in there to help us move forward the climate action work. Space plan, also part of our housing conversations. We expect to get an update on the space plan. Is what are all the areas in the county where we own property, and what can we do with it? Well, we're looking to get that soon, and then start thinking about where might we be able to engage in more housing related work. Talk about housing. I know that there's been a lot of conversation in the community around safe house and challenges with our domestic violence shelter, and that there are a number of beds that are going unused. Just to talk a bit about that, a big issue with that is that they don't have the staffing to make use of all of the beds. And we're looking at different. So if you know anybody that would want to do that work, go to this. They are hiring, and that's part of the challenge. So if they had more staff, more beds would be able to be opened. But we're going to have to look at some other options for how we might be able to make use of those beds. The issue is the building has to be used for domestic violence services. So we'll have to look at other ways. Maybe we can get case managers from other organizations that could partner with Safe House. I'm going to be looking at that over the next month or so. Let's see, transportation and senior services. So I've been engaging with the Washtenaw Housing or the Washtenaw Health Initiative around. They're really focused on senior transportation. They did a summit recently that was very interesting and talked a lot about how seniors there are a number of challenges with getting seniors across the county, and we're looking at ways to partner with the state to increase options for that. Something else that's really interesting about this is I think it's probably pretty easy to think about if you don't have access to transportation, it creates a food security issue. But the other big piece is around loneliness and social isolation. And there was the surgeon, what is it? Not the Surgeon General. It was the Surgeon General. Okay, yeah, the Surgeon General recently said that experiencing significant periods of loneliness is as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day for your health. So we're going to have to be more thoughtful about what we can do related to that. And this one is probably not of great interest to many people here, but we've been looking at what can we do to make sure that all of our employees within Washtenaw County are fairly compensated. So we've been working on a large package that would benefit our union and our non-union employees. I think people typically don't think about county government as a big organization, but we're an organization with 1,400 employees, and we have to make sure that we're doing right by our employees and making Washtenaw County a fantastic place to work. So that's another big thing that we're working on. That's the end of my list. So, go ahead. Yeah. Let's pass it on.
Thanks so much. Commissioner Sanders.
So it is still morning. Good morning. I'm Caroline Sanders, and I am the vice chair of the executive board for the Washtenaw County Commissioners. I represent District 4, which is all of Pittsfield Township, 10% of Ypsilanti Township, and a smidgen of the city of Saline. And I am, like Justin, serving in my second term on the Board of Commissioners. So I purposely put this T-shirt on today. I've been saying this for a while, and I had a friend actually make the T-shirt for me, which basically says, I don't have any raggedy friends. I don't have any raggedy friends. I think we're all blessed to be working with a like-minded group of individuals that even if we don't agree with each other on every single thing, as my mother used to say, teeth and tongue fall out, but you can't go anywhere. And so we figure out how to make it work. As Jason said, what did you say? People first?
People.
Am I saying that right?
It was 3 Ps.
It was people.
Pro people policy.
Pro people policy.
That's what
Okay.
it was. Yeah.
So I think I'm going to adopt that. Because I think everyone sitting at this table, the great thing is that we do all get along. And that makes us miles ahead of others when it comes to putting the best interests of our residents first, because we do all get along. Doesn't mean that we all agree. Doesn't mean that there's always going to be 9 unanimous votes in the same favor. But it still means that we're working on behalf of our residents. Justin basically covered the most important things related to what the county is doing, but I will add, we've put a significant amount of money into human services over the next 2 years. I hate bringing it up because it's a pain in my side, but coordinated funding went away. It's gone. But we have made sure that we put some money into those entities that were doing the bulk of the work for the next 2 years. We've also put money into the homeless and housing insecure situation that we're dealing with in Washtenaw County. And I'm going to have to say, as someone who has lived in 2 counties, I grew up in Wayne County, and I've lived in Washtenaw for about 35 years. There are things that we do here in this county that no other county is doing. And we don't often toot our own horn, nor do we get the recognition for that. There was some discussion earlier about how can, especially the Dems, support the work that we are all trying to do. And I would say that being a hedge of protection, when you hear slanderous and libelous information that's going out there that is not factually based, that sort of manipulates the truth as though you've had an interview with me and you have, but you write it up as you have. We need people to stand up and push back against that rhetoric because it's not accurate and it leaves a bad taste in the mouth of people that may not have the full information. And as I've said, the corporate poverty cry doesn't sit well with me, but neither does it when people say things like, well, you knew what you were standing up for when you ran for office. Many of us didn't. We knew what we wanted to do on behalf of others, but we didn't know some of the ugliness that we have to face, and we do it steadfastly. But that does not mean that we don't still need your support. Once you put us into office, you can't disappear. We need to have ongoing dialogue with you so that we know, you know what we need and we know what you need. It's a two-way street. The one thing that I did want to share with you that is important, the Office of Community and Economic Development is looking for reviewers right now. And I'm trying to get on here right now. I'm going to give you the quick and easy. So OCED is, they're recruiting for 3 opportunities to review grant proposals for the high impact grant funding round by way of the new Human Services Partnership. I'm going to give you a phone number because it would be too much to repeat the link, but you can apply over the phone if you call 734-245-9427. That's 734-245-9427. Now, they do require that you have had some experience, some previous experience, sort of working in these areas. but it is an opportunity for our residents to literally have a voice in reviewing grant applications for how they allocate this money out to the community. And so my colleague, Commissioner Light, had to leave early, but I'll share one thing that she typically says, which is, I am willing to listen to you, but I need you to help come with some solutions. So people can complain to us, and that's good, but help us figure out how we can effectuate some positive change. And if you do that, coupled with our experience, we should be able to come up with some sort of tangible solutions for problems that people are having here in the community. So I think I'm done with my
dollars, housing human services.
Oh, yeah.
It's 5.8 billion in April.
5.8 million
In just April.
for housing and human services in just April. So, you know, when you've got people out there packing our board meetings and saying that we don't care, it's not accurate. And if we could just divert that energy a little bit to asking questions instead of making allegations first, that would go a long way to us being able to really do the work. It takes away so much energy and wasted time when you're accusing us of things that you don't even have the facts for, right? And the information is pretty much out there. You can go on our websites, you can contact us, you know, our contact information is out there. If you have questions, I like to say, seek first to understand. And don't throw your rock and hide your hand. Ask us first so that we can give you the information that we know to be accurate. And then maybe you can reformulate that disgruntledness. Everybody's entitled. I'm disgruntled most of the time, which is why I ran for office. But we are here to do the work for you. We are not the bad guys. We're trying to help. And we just need more helpers to help us get the things done. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Somerville.
All right. Hi, everyone. I also didn't, this is a surprise panel for us. I don't have Annie's greatest hits, but so I represent the city of Ypsilanti Township, and part of Superior Township. And I also get to chair working session. So I want to invite everybody to join us on May 17th for our working session retreat. It starts at 3 p.m. and we're going to dig deep into some of our goals as we go into budget priorities. And one of the goals that came out at our working session where we all shared, and really it kind of showed that the 9 of us are pretty much aligned on some main issues. So one of the ones that came to the top is the East Side Rec and Community Center. And I think this has been something that's been in the process of being worked on for 2 decades, but for many reasons, even as recently as my time on Ypsi City Council, we thought we were getting somewhere with a site on Whitaker Road, and then that fell through. So I'm really excited for the opportunity to see the site that is located in Superior Township be like, digging dirt soon, hopefully. And so I get to work both in Washtenaw and Lansing because I work for Senator Irwin. And one of the things that we're working really hard on right now with Rep. Wilson and the rest of the Washtenaw delegation is filling the funding gap for the Eastside Rec and Community Center. We actually have an opportunity this time around since we have control of the gavel. So super excited about that. Hopefully we can celebrate something after the budget process finishes up this year. Other areas that we're working on as a board is just improving human services. I know we, Caroline just mentioned that we put some significant dollars behind housing and homelessness. So we just, one of my goals, and I think the goal of most of us, is just make sure that those the dollars do what we want them to do, which is prevent people from even getting evicted in the first place, but also providing emergency shelter and wraparound services. And then the last thing that I'll just add, and hopefully Prosecutor Savitt will talk a little bit about this at our last working session. We had him give a presentation to the board on the Economic Justice Center, and they're doing a lot of really great work that I think the board wishes to expand on to help with consumer protection. And also the area that I'm most excited about is going after bad landlords. So we have a lot of landlords in the district that I represent that take advantage of really low income people and people who just don't have the privilege of moving into a different apartment because it's really expensive to move, but they're living in conditions that are not great and really bad for their health. So I'm really excited for us to hopefully put some resources behind that to expand. Oh,
I guarantee we need to let people know that this is so well thought.
yeah. So the building that we will hopefully be purchasing from the school district, it has some bond debt. And I know it was mentioned earlier by one of the school board members, Janice Townsend, that the legislators from the Washington delegation, Senator Irwin, Rep. Wilson, and the whole team, Rep. Morgan and Sue Shank here, they're all working to retire a significant portion of that. But so if we purchase the site, we will be able to assume, I think it's it's almost 900,000 in bond debt. So it will not only, provide generational change in that part of the county to give people opportunities to have things like after school programming and recreation, but it will also help the schools continue to invest in kids, which they've been kind of beholden to all the debt that they're holding on to. Yep, Cheney School. What was that? So the school district, there's a few different types of bond debt actually in YCS. So the schools merged, the old Willow Run School District and the old Ipsy School District merged, and there was some bond debt related to the Willow Run buildings. And so that's about 19 million. So it's bonds that were taken. Yeah, they borrowed money previously to either improve or build more buildings. So schools all over the state of Michigan and the country do that in order to both maintain, and also back in the 90s, we had more kids in K through 12 schools. So there was a need to grow. It's funds, it's dollars borrowed. Yeah, sorry.
So when they consolidated,
they assumed the debt.
It's debt that takes away from their ability to pay teachers more and to provide additional services to their students, because they have to make that debt payment before they do anything else.
Yeah, at this point, I'd like to let Washington County Prosecutor Ellie Savitt speak. We don't have too much time left.
Okay, yeah. Also a surprise panel for me. But I think it's actually great that I get to go last, because we've heard a lot about the laws being made, the funds being allocated, and as prosecutor, I don't do any of that, right? But we get to see in a lot of cases the impact of the tremendous work that's being done in our legislature, at our county commission, really on the ground and impact people's lives. I'll start because Annie sort of threw me the alley-oop there on the Economic Justice Unit, which is a newish unit in our office that's been being funded for the past 2 years by a national grant from the Public Rights Project, and went in front of the Board of Commissioners to request that they make that unit permanent. And what that does is really tries to remedy a lot of the power imbalances that we've been talking about that we see in terms of corporations taking advantage of people. A statistic that I mentioned in my presentation to the working session on Wednesday, and that I think bears repeating, is the most common form of theft in the United States of America by far is wage theft, employers stealing from their employees. If you add up every other type of theft in the United States of America, every robbery, every pickpocket, every larceny, every home break-in, every car break-in, right? All of which are prosecuted, right? All of the monetary value of that combined is less than the total value of the total amount of money that people workers lose due to wage theft. I want to just repeat that. Wage theft exceeds every other type of theft combined. And it's rarely, if ever, addressed by prosecutors, by those with enforcement power. And I think that's wrong, right? Like, if somebody steals money from my pocket, right, that person should be held accountable. But if somebody steals money from my paycheck as a worker, that person should be held accountable too. And I don't care if it's a corporation, right? So the Economic Justice Unit focuses on that. We work very closely with labor partners, and we have a direct complaint forum set up. And we also do consumer protection work. And one thing I will mention, because it's what we've been working hard on this week, that just gives an example of why we need local enforcement power. There is a national debt collection company called Portfolio Recovery Associates, and I'm going to name them because I want the word to get out about this. The Federal Consumer Financial Protection Bureau recently sued them and said, you are suing on debt that is too old to collect on. You are suing on bad debt. You are taking advantage of people. And these tend to be people that tend to be very, very poor generally, right? And this debt recovery service sues them. The defendant, the person they say owes debt, almost always cannot afford a lawyer. And their business model is, even if the debt is bad, even if they don't actually owe it, we're going to go into court, and then that defendant is going to not show up to court, and it's going to be a default judgment, and we're going to win, and we're going to be able to garnish their wages, right? So they got sued. And then they had to settle the suit because the CFPB, the federal CFPB, was right. They were doing that. Here's the issue. There's no real mechanism to get that in front of every court in front of the in the United States, because if you don't have a lawyer as a defendant, you can't raise this. You can't say, look, here's this federal settlement, and you've got to abide by this. And you're likely to be defaulted. So one of the things we've been doing this week with our Economic Justice Unit is we're like, okay, fine. We're going to go into court and we're going to file notices with every single case involving Portfolio Recovery Associates to give the defendant notice, to give the lawyers that are representing Portfolio Recovery Associates notice, and most importantly, to give the court notice that not only is this debt potentially illegal, but as part of that settlement, Portfolio Recovery Associates actually may owe the defendant money, because there was $12 million that they said you have to pay to these people that you're trying to collect bad debt on. So so at the start of the week, when I was making my slideshow for the working sessions on Wednesday, putting together the slide deck, and we had 70 cases that we'd identified involving Portfolio Recovery Associates in Washtenaw County. Well, it gets better. It gets better. So then Wednesday morning, Todd, our Economic Justice Unit head, is working with an intern. We're going through all these cases. It's not that easy to figure that out, because a lot of these are in garnishment too. And he says, actually, it's over 200. So you'll have to orally correct that at commission tonight. So I said, okay, well, that'll be easy enough. And then yesterday we were getting everything ready to file and getting everything ready to mail out. He says, actually, it's closer to 300. So we keep finding these cases, and we're filing in all of them, right? But I want to mention this because that's the work that we're trying to do to remedy that power imbalance that we talked about in a lot of contexts earlier, but there needs to be an enforcement mechanism at the local level, and that's what the Economic Justice Unit is doing. But I want to close that. I can talk about the Economic Justice Unit for hours, but I'll talk about some of our other stuff. But if you know anybody that may be facing debt from Portfolio Recovery Associates, tell them about this, right? We're trying to get the word out. We'll be doing a social media blast. We're mailing this information to everybody whose address we have that's a defendant in these cases. But this word needs to get out, and we're only doing it in Washtenaw County. I don't even know how many cases there are in Wayne County and other counties, right? But those people are entitled to justice as well. But I have an Economic Justice Unit like we do. So get that word out. Couple other things just to mention that we're doing. The prosecutor's office, that all this flows from the great partnerships we have with the legislature and with our county commission. Last week, our sexual assault kit initiative filed charges in a cold case rape case from 2013 involving the testing of old rape kits. This is a partnership that the legislature has been funding and hopefully will continue to fund into the future. It's a partnership with the State Attorney General's Office, the Michigan State Police, victim advocate from Safe House Center, to go back with these old cold case rape cases, investigate them, and see if we can bring charges. 10 years is a very, very long time, but it is tremendously important that we be able to get justice for sexual assault survivors. And that's an example of, one of the phenomenal partnerships that we have, and that is being funded and supported by our Democratic legislators. So thank you. We had the bench bar conference in Washtenaw County yesterday, actually. And Justin mentioned some of the new problem solving courts, the new specialty courts that get people help, get people treatment, get them off the path they were on. It's not, you don't have accountability for what you've done. In a lot of cases, this is really, really hard work, but it allows people to get treatment in lieu of jail, in lieu of a criminal record, and get their lives back on track. Well, we had our bench bar conference yesterday, and it's just great talking to judges about how well these are going. We've got drug courts in the circuit court and in the district courts. We've got a veterans treatment court. We've got a mental health court in the district court, right? And they're expanding these. And last week, the state Supreme Court released its annual study about how effective these are. And I'll just tell you, statewide, you are 3 times less likely to recidivate if you are the graduate of a drug court program, of a sobriety court program, than if you go through the traditional criminal legal system. You are 2 times less likely to recidivate if you are a graduate of a mental health court than if you go through the traditional criminal legal system. You are 2 times less likely to recidivate if you are a graduate of a veterans court than if you go through the traditional legal system. That we see these stories play out in Washtenaw County every single day. And the great thing about this is it's teamwork, right? We're working with the judges, we work with defense counsel, we work with probation, and we get people the help. We work with community service providers, who are the most important ones. And we get people the help and treatment they need. They're doing hard work to get back on the right track. And that's what all of us really should want. So these are tremendously effective. I'm grateful to the county commission and to our state partners for funding these. And at the end of the day, they keep us safer in the long run. And then, just a third thing I'll mention, and I know we're running out of time, but I always can talk about statistics and everything like that. But I always like to end with a human story. And I started my week actually this week. Last week, a juvenile probation officer, emailed me a picture of me and a young person that I had taken at some community event. And I had no idea who the kid was, right? He just said, "Can I take a picture with you?" Turns out he was a kid who was involved in our court system, right? And he said, I'm not going to name the kid, right? But he said, "This kid is really doing great." We placed him on sort of an informal docket, right? Where if he does everything right, the charges against him will be dismissed, which is something that we always like to encourage, working with our partners. And he's done everything, and he's got his hearing on it next week, and he would like to personally invite you to attend, right? So I said, okay, well, that sounds like a fun thing to do. And it was fantastic. The young man spoke. He's doing great. He's about to graduate from high school. He's got college plans. He's successful in a number of arenas, an accomplished athlete. He's involved in the community. He's taken this opportunity to turn his life around, thanks to compassionate work by our probation office, thanks to compassionate work by the court. And, he spoke eloquently. They read from his essay, reflecting on why what he had done was wrong. You could tell he really got it. And what I loved most about it, this was all on Zoom, his mom was sitting next to him, and she was beaming, and she was proud at how much progress he made, and that the future that was ahead of that young man. Now, I say this for a couple of reasons. One is it shows the great partnerships we have, and his case ultimately got dismissed. One is it shows the great partnerships we have. Two, he was 17 years old when he came into the juvenile system. Senator Irwin has been a big champion of raise the age legislation, right? Which a couple of years ago raised the age for juvenile jurisdiction to 18 from 17. If it wasn't for action by our legislators, he would have never gotten that second chance, that chance to work with a compassionate juvenile probation agency, the chance to be on that informal docket, that chance to have that second chance that we should want all our young people to have. Maybe the most important thing that's happened in his life, and I have no doubt he's going to go on to do great things. And when he looks back on his many accomplishments, when he's older and has a family, this is just going to be a blip on the radar, right? But it could have been much different, and it could have been much different if it wasn't for the community that we're working, compassionate legislators making legal change. And that's how all this stuff is playing out on the ground in really significant ways for people's lives.
Okay, that's kind of hard to follow. However, I did promise to be just for questions. So if anyone has not yet asked a question of the panelists, Jim Russo. Where's the mic? Let's see.
I'll just stand up here, if you don't mind. I have a question. I can ask it from here. In the Ypsilanti schools, especially in the eastern part of the district, there are kids who haven't been to school sometimes for weeks at a time this year because the school buses often don't run. And I understand from talking to the folks in Ypsi that they pay good wages for those jobs, higher than many school districts, but they can't get drivers. So my question is, what can we do on an emergency basis so kids aren't missing school? Can the county loan drivers to the school district? Can we get some visibility to this issue so that our children can get to school?
Anyone gonna handle that one?
That's a tough one. Kathy and I talked about that. Was it yesterday or the day before yesterday? Yeah, so we're gonna have to look into that. We'll have to look into seeing if there's any way we can make a financial allocation to support wages to make the job more appealing. It's a pretty similar kind of challenge that we're seeing with people not interested in working at a safe house, for example. So I don't have a great answer for you other than that. I'm glad Kathy has made us significantly more aware of it, and so we can start looking for a solution.
Anyone else care to chime in? Let me get you the mic, Kathy.
So I think what Jim is saying and what I kind of asked, because I asked questions as well as talked about the concern. This is kind of an emergency. We have kids who got behind because of COVID, and now they're back in school, except they're not back in school. They want to be, their parents want them to be, but the families that have the least are getting hurt the most by this because they may not have transportation. They may not have the ability to jump in the car and take their kids to school when the bus doesn't show up. And I know Ypsi Community Schools is doing the very best that they can to hire bus drivers. So the question is, what can be done on an emergency basis? You have Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. You have buses that have been purchased by nonprofits, which is a wonderful thing with ARPA money, because transportation is a huge barrier for a lot of folks. This is an emergency. Our kids are literally not in school, and the data on absenteeism shows kids who are not in school do not learn. So this is something, whether it's the state or the county. Thank you, Jim, for bringing it up.
I'll take the mic back because I'll say another quick thing about it. I know we're running out of time, so it's easier to have the walking mic.
And I know there are no easy solutions.
And I say the issue is more complicated because it gets involved in collective bargaining agreements, which creates an added challenge. You can say something, Sue? No. Okay. Is there another question? We'll take like two more questions.
No, that was the last question. We are out of time. The last 30 seconds goes to Teresa Reed. Thank you so much to our panel. It was a great discussion.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, thank you, you guys. You make us so proud. And really, for me, it's like you just motivate the work. So thank you for all that you do. We really, really appreciate it. I want to point out something that I forgot to put on the important dates over there, the 6th CD picnic. So we have a new congressional district. Yay! God, what a great district we have now. And we have a picnic, the first one next Saturday, 1 to 4 o'clock in Plymouth, 940 Fairground Street. It's the Lions Club park. So if you can make it, go and show Debbie Dingle some love and meet everybody, meet other people in the new 6th. So that's great. Money in politics. I'm so moved by what you guys have been saying about how hard it is to get stuff done because of the money in the politics. So Monday, the 15th, Voters Not Politicians, go talk to them about what you want to see. If we get a ballot initiative on that in 24, wouldn't that be awesome? So go and support them. It's the Ipsy Library. And there's probably more, but I can't remember what it was. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for being here.